when I think about the opioid crisis, I think what we're really talking about are deaths due to opioid overdose. And so an overdose can occur really anytime anyone uses an opioid. And when I say opioid, that's really an umbrella term that includes things like painkillers, prescription painkillers, so Vicodin, Percocet, oxycodone, all the way to heroin and actually to the opium poppy, which is where originally these substances were derived from. So that's sort of the big term. And what we've seen in Massachusetts and across the country has been this dramatic rise in unintentional death from overdose on these drugs or medications. And while, again, this can happen anytime someone uses an opioid, most often when we see these deaths, it's due to untreated opioid addiction. So often we're really talking about right now is a crisis of opioid addiction. And one of the reasons that's so devastating and all of these deaths are so devastating is that opioid addiction is a completely treatable illness. And so really no one should be dying from an overdose because we have things we can do in the setting of an overdose to save someone's life and to keep people safe while they're actually in the throes of addiction. And we have treatment that we know reduces the death toll and helps people get into long-term remission to lead meaningful lives that really shouldn't be foreshortened by this disease.
Every day I encounter people in recovery who inspire me and who really give me hope around this. You know, I think a lot of what we hear about, you know, in the media is the, you know, people who aren't doing well, you know, people who are, you know, tragically dying. Most of the people that I have the privilege to work with are really making great strides in their lives. It's an inspiring thing to watch, and I feel privileged to be a part of that. And it really gives me great hope for the future.
The opioid crisis began about 15 years ago when we saw an increase in the prescription of opioid analgesics or narcotic analgesics, or sometimes referred to as pain relievers. Because we saw such an explosion of prescriptions, what we found was that more people than ever before were exposed to opioids. In past generations, not very many people were exposed to opioids, but with this surge in prescribing, with a genuine intention of relieving pain, those who have a vulnerability to becoming dependent on opioids or developing an addiction problem on opioids were now exposed.
With the prescription opioid pain medication, it seemed like there was an abundance of these drugs everywhere. You know, I had a lot of friends that also had injuries that were being prescribed medication. It just seemed like it was easier for my generation as an underage person to get access to illegal prescription narcotics on the streets than to get somebody to buy you alcohol because of the accessibility of these drugs.
The problem that we have currently is that practitioners are literally all over the map. Some people will not prescribe anything for any condition, and some people will give 30, 60, 90 pills of oxycodone or hydrocodone. And so I think what's happening is that we're creating this severe problem of expectations for patients because they don't know what they're going to get from which doctor. We need to do a better job with that.
I pretty much started using drugs. Actually, I started drinking alcohol before the age of 14. And then eventually from there I progressed into snorting cocaine. And it was probably around the age of maybe 20 that I started snorting heroin.
The opioid crisis is twofold actually. It's prescription medication and also powdered heroin. And now the introduction of fentanyl and various forms of that. So it's taken on two folds where we have to attack it from both ends.
The opioid crisis is affecting everybody. I mean, it's in every community. It doesn't discriminate against anybody. It doesn't matter poverty, it doesn't matter race, it doesn't matter where you come from. Every family is affected by it.